Adventure Island, when it's Adventure Training Day, well, everybody says it was a fantastic place. And it ran for best part of 30 years. As it went on, all the youth clubs in Plymouth also took part, almost straight away from the start, in fact. So that the Casemates, for instance, if you're a young person's club in Plymouth, so that's Girl Guides, Boy Scouts, Sea Scouts, YMCA, YWCA, you could hire a casemate for a year. Other clubs and societies in Plymouth and charities raised money for those other charities that were hiring the room to actually buy them extra sailing ship or sailing boats, canoes, kayaks, things like that. And it's a way of the money generated from renting those out to those groups actually kick-started the Adventure Centre. So the future plans for the island are very difficult. There are a lot of problems on the island. The boat shed at the front's asbestos, that's got to be removed. The jetty, which is the only access to the island, that's falling down. So those problems have got to be fixed. The island then hopes to become a hotel and wedding destination. So these would be luxury bedrooms with living accommodation next to them. The magazines and underground parts, there's talk of those becoming gymnasiums and spa for the hotel. It is complicated. They're not allowed to build anything extra on the island, and they're not allowed to knock anything down on the island. So what we've got, or what the island has, is all the island can use, and which does limit what can be done. So as regards the light tunnels are, or the lighting passages, are pretty well everywhere around the magazine. Now, how they were used is because when the magazines and the gun emplacements were first designed, we were still using black powder, so that's old-fashioned gunpowder. And as that gets drier, gets dustier, it's a huge explosion risk. So in regard to the magazines, they were obsessed about keeping dust levels down, and they were obsessed about making sure there were no sources of ignition. So the lighting passages run over the top of and beside and even underneath all the other passages. And as you walk along a lighting passage, you come to little alcoves, and when you look down the alcove, there would have been a sheet of glass at the end of those, and you push down a lantern towards that sheet of glass, just a safety feature. They were probably used right up until, well, certainly until before the First World War. So the room we're in right now is one of the 21 casemates that run around the edge of the island. They're a way of sheltering guns from vertical fire. As cannons developed, it was no longer a case of just firing guns straight at people. We were now firing shells up into the air, so they came down and landed on top of people. And each one would have housed one gun and its crew. So during the summer holidays, you could volunteer in Plymouth to come along and learn how to fire the guns, join the army for a couple of months, if you like. And they would have come out and slept out here next to the guns. They used to have a glass and wooden frame at the back, and just metal shutters at the front. So it would have been a bit drafty. They were allowed a coal stove, and they had straw in their mattresses. By the time of the First World War, we'd taken all these guns out, and these were used as barracks. We had ordinary, I say ordinary, they were 60-pound cannons, smoothbore cannons in. So those would be the sort of cannons that you might see on, in Nelson's day. And they were on carriages, on wooden platforms in the casemates here. But they were smoothbore, very short range, so they were quickly replaced, and they replaced them down here with 9-inch RMLs. But they're still using black powder. It's old-fashioned gunpowder. A, it's dangerous. B, it's unreliable. How explosive it is depends on how finely it's ground, how fine the dust is, how damp it is, all sorts of things like that. So it's still very primitive. Up on top of the island, we started with a huge, big RMLs. And by big, I mean we had 9-inch ones down here. We had 5, or we actually had three 11-inch ones and 2 12-inch ones right on top of the island. And they're just even bigger versions of the same thing. Those guns up there, 12-inch, the biggest ones, because they wanted big guns that are going to shoot right out as far as the breakwater and beyond. So the Dragon's Teeth, they're, if you like, pyramidal stones. They're quite big, so they're good 6 or 7 feet at least in height. Probably higher than that if you could look at them with no water there, with an iron spike on the top. The idea is that any ships passing over them, they takes the bottom of the ship out, or makes a hole in the bottom of the ship. Then you've got the very narrow passage of the actual bridges where ships can pass through. The more you look, the more you find, and it's like constantly peeling away layers and layers, like an onion, of history and how things are going on. And it's the old story that if you know what to look for and actually sit down and look, you can see so much, and then you start asking, what is that? And then that leads you on to another answer, which opens up even more questions.